All right, so we got a handful of shots here, one pretty light and the rest of them pretty dark, so totally different vibes. So let's get started on this one. And first things first, I think I'm just going to go ahead and crop this junk out of the bottom left there. And the problem with that is it leaves it a bit, well, not far enough offset for me. Let's put it that way. And there was a bit of just like that really light up there without much texture, like this stuff up here. And so I kind of want to get rid of that as well. So something like that feels pretty well balanced to me. Just kind of setting them off that side, maybe a little bit, cheat in a little bit like that. All right, and there's a little bit of blue hanging out in the ground as well as on the turkey itself. So I'll warm that white balance up a good bit just to neutralize that, get rid of a little bit of that magenta cast, and that's looking pretty good. So a few things I want to do now at this point. I want to darken the turkey because he's definitely a little washed out there for those black dark feathers. And then I want to kind of wash out this whole surrounding even more to make it look more like a painting. So I'm going to start with just an object select. I think that's probably going to work quite well. So we'll just grab that to see if we can get the turkey. It does look like it did really well. And let's start with just a touch of dehaze, and then mostly I'm going to get it back by dropping those blacks. That did add a little blue, so I'll warm it up and get rid of some of that magenta again. So there we go. Now we got our turkey standing out nice and dark. I'm going to lift the shadows up just a little bit because I do want to maintain detail in those feathers, but I just want the contrast out of it. So watch this. Before, after. See how much more contrast, but yet the detail on the back of the bird is kind of staying there. Look at that. It actually shows more. So that's great. So now we'll just go ahead and duplicate and invert that. So I should have the opposite effect. Or selection or mask. And then I'm just going to do some negative dehaze to sort of wash it out even more. I'm going to lower it just a little bit on the exposure. I don't want it to be like painfully like washed out, sort of, you know, in your face. And then I'm going to keep the saturation in it. And that to me is starting to look a little bit more like the painting. So before, after. So it's just basically a big reduction in contrast. And so with the combination of those two masks and the color correction, we go from there to there. So you can see how much more the turkey stands out and how much less everything else stands out. I mean, not much else to do to it at this point. Maybe let's just take it into Photoshop. We'll do a quick tweak. Oh, I just updated Photoshop, of course. So we're going to do a quick tweak on maybe just a little bit more red on the head of the bird there. The contrast is really good. Maybe just some of these darker spots. We'll see if we can just fade them a little bit more and see if that helps out. So we'll just wait for this image to open up in Photoshop. Here we go. And get started on that. Let me go ahead and turn my tablet on here and get going. All right, so first things first, I guess, let's just zoom in on this section here. I mean, there's really not a whole heck of a lot of red on this turkey to begin with, this female, or I don't even know what it is. Pretty ratty looking, actually. Now that I look at it zoomed in, boy, thing needs some help with some feathers, but we can maybe get a little bit more red out of it. So we'll throw a curves adjustment layer on it, go to the red channel, increase that a little bit, and then drop the yellow just a little bit to kind of keep it more in like an orange zone. And then we'll just kind of come in here with our paintbrush, make sure it's a soft brush. Just paint that in on a couple of these red spots. I mean, this really is not going to make much of a difference in the whole grand scheme of this image, but it might not hurt. All right, now I just want to soften up some of these extra dark spots. I'm just going to do a blank layer and just do a light cloning. It looks a little, it's okay, I guess, on the whole thing there. Yeah, just kind of lighten up just some of these really kind of dark spots that are grabbing my attention. And that should kind of do the trick there. Yeah, I think we're good with this one. I mean, I don't have anything else I want to do to it. This was kind of the vibe I wanted to go for with this one, and just get that turkey really standing out and that almost painted look to it. And so I'm glad this worked out because that was not a particularly great angle or anything like that, but it worked. All right, on to the next photo. And we have this lovely little yellow rump there against the black background. This is dominant for sure, so I want to try and minimize that a little bit. But in general, I like the offset. I'm going to just rotate it a little bit to help get rid of some of that down there. And let's figure out where I want to end up, something like that seems good. That little notch is a little weird there, so I'll shift it over. White balance is wrong as usual. So yeah, we'll just kind of warm it up. Less magenta. That looks pretty good. And then, yeah, I'm just going to drop those blacks to black out that background. I don't know where I want to go with it. I think I want to leave just a little bit back there because I could go just solid black. I mean, that's pretty clean, huh? It's actually not that interesting back there. Yeah, screw it. Let's go solid black with it. So we'll just drop the blacks until it gets rid of most back there. And then at that point, throw a linear on the top half here. Just drop the exposure, linear on this bit over here, drop the exposure. And now we're totally black back there. I'm going to throw another linear over here, drop the exposure just a touch, just to get that. It was just so dominant over here. I want to try and minimize some of that by darkening it. And actually maybe let this bleed out onto the perch a little bit. And then I really want the bird to be the bright thing there. It still feels kind of dominant now, so let's see if I can get rid of more of that. That feels better. Yeah, there we go. Something like that. I'll maybe do a little bit more burning on that stuff outside of the bird. So we'll just do that in here. Just a curves adjustment layer, lay it up like that, grab the brush, and then we'll just kind of lightly start painting on here. The nice thing is we do not have to be selective even a little bit, because if you bleed over into the background, all it does is nothing, basically. It's already solid black back there. I'm going to do a dodge layer and sort of brighten the bird up just a little bit. There's not a lot to do this. This is just about that bird there. So anyway, he definitely is standing out more now, before, after. That kind of helped minimize that perch, and we just got him against that solid black background. Nice and easy. And that's it. So there we go. That one's done. On to the next one. All right, here we go. Now we have a bluebird, finally. One of these Western Bluebirds. Tough shot here with this head angle. I did get the light on him, which is good. And again, we're seeing some of that blue in there. So I'll start with the white balance. We'll just kind of correct that, make it nice, like a warm golden light instead. And then I think on the bird itself, I want to lighten things up. I do want to keep some of the green in the background. It's a bit too much on the offset there. I don't need that much. And this area right here just feels so dominant. I'm just going to kind of crop that out of there. So that works pretty good. I think, watch, I'm just going to chuck a linear on this section here, feather it up a bunch, drop the highlights to tone that down, and then we'll just do a little object select right here on the bird itself. That should work nicely. Lighten up a little bit on the exposure, but mainly it's the highlights that we're going to bump up there. And I got to say, I feel like it's a little too warm on the bird, white balance wise, so we'll cool it off just a little, and let's bring some of that color back in there. We'll saturate it, maybe drop that black point, make it nice and rich. And let's see what that before, after, definitely, that's nice. It stands out much better. And again, I think we're pretty much done on this. Let's open this up in Photoshop just for workflow purposes. I don't think there's much else to do here. Maybe I'll do just a little bit of burning in this area just to kind of take that down, these brighter spots, just real subtly. And then maybe if we can get a little bit more blue on the head. So I'm going to do a curves adjustment layer, go to the blue channel, take a little bit of cyan or red out, which leads me to cyan. And then we'll just kind of paint that in right here on the edge of the bird where it had some of those bluer tones to begin with. You can see a little bit of it over here, which is also part of it is just the shadow there. But I think that works good. And then I'm just going to add some contrast with another contrast adjustment layer to that area right there. I think we're good, folks. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So we go before, after, real subtle changes there. But I do think taking that down just a little bit was a helpful thing. So that photo's done. Close and save it, and we'll move right on to the next one. They're all going to be really similar here. There's not a lot of major changes to do to these. So here's the next one. I think I like this composition. I like how this sort of just this line leads up to the bird there, but maybe I just don't like this section as much. So I'll just come off of that side a little bit there. And now we'll kind of figure out the placement of where I want it to kind of cut off on the bottom there. That seems pretty good to me. And so, yeah, I think we're good there. A little bit warming, again, not a ton, just a little bit less magenta. I want to lighten the bird separate from everything else here. So I'm going to do this real simply. Just put a linear right there. Basically selects everything beneath it, and there we go. I can really tone down that log so it's not getting hit up so much. Object select the bird. That should work well. Good enough anyway. I'm going to do mostly a highlight, do a little bit of exposure, but you can see the back of that selection on the shadow side, how it starts to fall apart there. That's why I don't want to go too far. Like if I just do a bunch with exposure, it's just like a weird line back there. It wasn't bad, but that's not how it looked originally. And so a very slight bit with the exposure lift, and then we'll get more out of it with the highlight lift. And I'm going to go pretty far with that just to get that bird to stand out. We'll see what that looks like on the whole there. I do like a little bit of the green back there, and I might actually try and bring a little bit more of that out by lifting the shadows globally, drop those blacks just so it doesn't wash out. And then we'll give the whole thing a little hit of saturation. So way too far on the bird now. Watch, if I before and after this, like it's just too light on that bird. Does not fit in. It just looks selected and edited to me. So I'm just going to back off that highlight lift, which should do the trick. Before, after, that feels closer, but still not. I'm just going to back off the amount of this entirely. There we go. That feels better. And then I got to say, maybe I can just lift the exposure as a whole. That feels like a better balance between the two. I still think maybe I can tone down this right here. So I'll do that selectively here in Photoshop. Just a burn layer again, just a curves adjustment layer with some darkening, and then just painting lightly with the brush here and just trying to take down some of those dark spots. Whoops, it's a little bit too much of a zoom there. The eye ring, I think, is a nice touch on this bird, and so I think I want to exaggerate that a little bit. So now I'm using like a dodge layer, just a curves adjustment layer with some lightning on it, and then maybe just a little bit, very subtle on the face. Let's do the same thing with the blue. We're going to do a curves adjustment layer. We'll go to the blue channel, lift that blue up, red channel, get rid of some of that, invert the mask so it's not affecting anything else, and then we're just going to paint that in back here to exaggerate and enhance that blue. This bird's definitely not in breeding plumage anyway, so it should not be going too crazy on the blue. So there's our before and after in Photoshop. Looking pretty good. Just kind of a minor, just dodge and burn throughout, and it was in a good spot. I could have exposed lighter in camera for the bird, but this was right on the verge in the original exposure. If I go back to that, you'll see if I reset that, you can see how like some of these areas are just, they're getting bright there. Could have gone a little bit more, but they're getting pretty light. And I knew at ISO, I'm guessing it's pretty low, 200, I'd get that detail back, no problem. All right, this one's going to be cool. I like the background in this. I don't love the perch, especially with that straight cut, and it's got these weird lines in it, but whatever. The color looks pretty good. Let's lift it up a little bit. I'm going to warm it just a touch, very slight bit less magenta. There just felt like there was like a purple cast throughout both the perch and the bird. That looks pretty good right there. I think we can go even a little bit warmer. Let's get some detail up with the shadows, drop the blacks for contrast, really richens up that background. And I like sort of this big oval that just kind of leads down to the bird there of background. A little linear on this side, drop the highlights to just tone down that perch, and I think we're pretty good. I'll do the rest of the dodging and burning in Photoshop. And I'm going to take a little bit more blue out of the perch just because I don't want it to compete with the bird itself. So hue and saturation, adjustment layer, go to the blue channel, subtract the saturation on that, invert it so it's not affecting anything else, and then we just painted it on that perch. We get a nice gray perch now without all that weird shadow blue on it. And then why not? Let's just burn it down a little bit more. So we're using a curves adjustment layer with a paintbrush to just sort of take that down just a little bit more. All right, curves adjustment layer. Let's lighten up this bird. Something like that should be good. Invert it so it's not affecting anything else, and then we're just going to paint it in here. I am accidentally making a halo, but don't worry, I'm going to come back in and fix that. A little too bright right there, and we'll get all those areas. So smaller brush, come back in, paint with black, and then just get rid of any of that halo that I accidentally painted in there. And just like we did on the rest, let's make a curves adjustment layer, add a little bit more blue to this bird. Why not? Enhance it just a little bit, right? So we'll just paint with white on that to just give that color just a little bit of kick. The wing is pretty good, but the head felt like it could use a little bit more. Last little bit of burning. You know what? I'm just going to go back to the burn layer I already have there and just take down this blue, the green just a little bit. And then this side specifically, that kind of edge bright spot there. And there we go. Before, after. Nice and dramatic. Really leads you right in. The bird stands out nicely. It's super strong light, but got the great angle on the bird, right? The whole side of the head is lit. The whole wing is lit. We got some shape to it. It's dramatic against that dark background. So that's what makes it work. That's what makes it work for me. All right, so we'll save and close that one. Move right on to the next one. I'm happy with that one. That actually showed off the bird pretty well. This one too has got some good color on the birds. We just need to kind of make that bird stand out more. Exposure lift up, shadows up, black speck down, just a touch. White balance, warm it a little tiny bit. The magenta actually looks fine on this one because of all that green back there. I'm going to crop off some of this on the right. Boy, I don't know if I want some of that there or just get rid of it. Yeah, it's cleaner without it. All right. Let's try a radial right here. Big feather on that. Drop those highlights just to tone down that log again. And oops, we'll see if we can get a little bit more out of the bird. Man, these shadows are tough. There's an object select on them, brighten them up. Let's get those highlights up again. Lift the shadows a little bit, drop the blacks. There we go. That brings the contrast back in that belongs there, but much better. The bird's standing out much nicer now. Watch before, after. Into Photoshop we go. Just a little bit more dodging and burning, and then same thing. I'm going to get rid of that blue with the hue and saturation adjustment layer off of that perch because just I don't like the blue in the shadows, and it sort of competes with the bird a little bit. All right, here comes my burn adjustment layer. So we'll just kind of take down these brighter spots. I'm trying not to hit the already dark spots too much more because I don't want them to go like black. And then this whole area is just brighter than the others. And I kind of like having the brighter portion of the background behind the bird there. So that's good. And smaller brush, we'll throw a dodge layer in here. Let's just do a quick object select on this just to keep it sort of narrowed down to the bird. That's what I'm looking for. There we go. We'll hide that selection. Now I can use a bigger brush. Just paint in and dodge that in some of these spots. A little bit down there, but not too much. I don't want to lighten up these areas that are in shade and make the lighting look all weird. This one, I don't think it needs any more blue. That bird is looking mighty blue already. So before, after, definitely focuses us much more on the bird. And that's what I'm after on all of these shots. Every photo I do, right? I always want to focus on the bird a little bit more. All right, I think we got one or two more. So let's go ahead and close and save this one. And there we go. Let's see. Yep, last image right here. Backlit shot. All right, this one's definitely going to need some editing. So number one, let's crop out the secondary bird down there. I think we can crop in a bit on this one. That's I don't like to crop too heavy when I don't have to, but that looks pretty good. And I want to leave a little bit of that warmth up there. We're going to go a bit lighter and a bit warmer overall. Less magenta. Always tends to go that way. Yeah, I want kind of like a warm backlit sunny vibe. Shadow lift a little bit, exposure lift. This is what's really going to bring it back to where it should be. Drop the black slider, get that contrast back. I do, and I will edit this bird separately. The whole middle in the back here kind of feels a little too washed out. So we'll just kind of darken that with the radial and decrease the feather until it kind of takes over the area I want. I will, however, subtract an object select to get rid of the bird out of that. And then we'll do a new object select just on the bird. Hopefully, there we go. Lift him up just a little bit. Shadows up a good bit, and then drop those blacks for contrast. The bird's head isn't getting as light as everything else, so watch. I'm going to go a little bit further here and subtract with a linear. Just fade it off that bottom there. So now the top half of the bird gets a little bit more than the bottom half, and the tail. Kind of decrease the feather on that. And that's looking pretty good to start out with. Yeah, I like that. All right, into Photoshop we go. I may have gone a little too light on that, so I might have to do some burning because it just doesn't make sense that the bird's that lit with how backlit it is and how strong that backlight is. So we'll start with a burn here, and I'm just going to kind of come in and start painting and darkening these really light areas here. I don't like all the additional color they're getting, but that's an easy fix with a separate adjustment. And we'll let some of that bleed off into the background, no big deal. But we're just going to kind of try and darken down and minimize this whole log, especially the bottom half there. It is a bummer this one section got hit with sun because the rest of it isn't getting hit with too much sun. And so it would have left the bird up there. But hue and saturation adjustment layer, we'll just desaturate it. Paint that in right in that spot so it's less. And then I'm actually going to come in and burn it again with another curves adjustment layer. This time I'm going to really take it down. Just going to take the highlight point like way down. There we go. And now we can just sort of gray it up a little bit. That may be too much of a saturation reduction, so I'll back off of that now. Going back to that layer, I'll bring some of the color back. But there we go. That sort of minimizes it. It looks weird though. This is the challenge. Anytime I do it that much, yeah, it's just too much. So we'll bring that back up. When you can tell it's being hit by sun, and then you darken it so much that it becomes just like this dull gray, to me it just looks super funky. But from there to there, definitely minimizes it. And then the total before and after definitely minimizes that. All right, I think the bird's okay. I just want to exaggerate some of that rim light. So I'm going to do another dodge layer. And this time I'm going to come in with a real tiny brush and just hit just these edges. Whoops. There we go. Oh, what's going on? There we go. Oh, I think I hit a button to accidentally lock that first dodge layer. So you couldn't paint on it. All right, here we go. So we're just going to outline the bird, get that rim light going. Oops, too far there. Just a nice tiny brush. Anytime I mess up, I just come back and switch and paint with black, and that usually fixes it up. That's already glowing quite nicely there. We can put a little bit more into that catch light if we want, but it's not really going to show in the whole view. And then some of that original Lightroom mask was sort of giving a bit of a flare there around the bill and some stuff like that. So I'm going to come in with this burn layer real precisely and just kind of darken that back up. And then we're just going to kind of bleed it out here. And then I'll switch back to paint with black and we'll kind of fade that in so it just subtly darkens that. There was just a halo I didn't like there. So watch before, after, super subtle. I don't know that actually made a difference there. Let's see, before, after. Yeah, it did. I mean, this is all being so stupid and like weirdly picky. Back to a dodge layer. Maybe just a little bit more glow up there, right? Something like that. Just kind of pick where we want it to glow. And now our total before, after in Photoshop, that's done. I am going to reset the original in this one and show it to you compared to the final image here in, I'll do that in Lightroom, mainly because I want you to see the difference in the edit on this one, because this one was a bit more significant. So watch, I'll reset that. But between the white balance and the adjustments, like look how much more the bird stands out there than it does there. It kind of faded away, but I really needed to shoot this dark because look, I still almost overexposed that right there. It's kind of getting some lost detail anyway. And so I needed that dark of an exposure for those areas to be able to get this in the end. But side by side, you can see the big difference there. This looks so much nicer. So let's take a look at all of our final photos here. We'll just go filter this out for just the Photoshop documents. And there we go. There's all of our photos. So thanks for sticking with me on this one. I hope you enjoyed this shoot. It was a fun kind of just wander around, see what we can see. And I'm happy with some of these images. Like, you know, this one, I got to say, for where it was and the direction I was shooting, like shooting down on it so much, I kind of really like how this turned out. It's just something a little different with just interesting color and soft texture. And then all of these like black, dark, dramatic background ones, I think all work quite nicely. This one in hindsight looks like it could use a little bit more pop compared to that one. So I could probably, in fact, I'll do that. Let's open that up. We'll edit the original layered file. And just throw on a curves adjustment layer and we'll just kind of pop that top end there and keep the blacks down. So watch, we go from there to there. Much better. I didn't want to do it on just the bird because, again, I think it would make that bird look so weirdly bright compared to everything else that is getting hit with the sun there. But if you do it as a global adjustment, the log that he's perched on comes up, basically brightens with it. And now watch, if I put these side by side, fits in a lot better, right? The whites are a little bit more close to that one, and I think it looks good. Really digging the color on that one, the color and the showing off the burr on this one. The only thing I hate on this is that shadow there, but can't win them all. And then we got the backlit shot. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed.